What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes. I'm coming to you guys from my campsite here at Joshua Tree. It's beautiful out here. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of subtle energy awareness and its association with personal evolution, or spiritual evolution, I could say more specifically. Because, I keep coming back to this, that seems to be the most important aspect, at least for me right now, and I don't see really a stop to it. This process of tuning into the denser pockets in my physical body, but then how that associates to my energy field, and then releasing those dense pockets and opening up energy flow. And it almost seems to me like this is the entire process. This is what you learn in yoga and qigong. This is what you learn in like vipassana meditations. This is what you learn in any kind of like mystical practice. Now they have different methods for being able to focus on different areas and then move energy through in different patterns through different areas of your body. But essentially, it's about tuning into these subtle energy movements throughout your physical body and then into your energy field and astral body. So it's essentially linking your thoughts, your emotions, and your feeling senses with each other. So you basically start becoming hyper aware of, well, when I have this thought, it tightens me in this particular area. And the tightening, or these different sensations can be really, really subtle. So it can be something along the lines of, well, we've probably all experienced something that is more, intense. Like when you have a crazy experience, you feel your solar plexus seize up, right? So that's more gross. It's more of something that we've all experienced. But this keeps getting subtler and subtler and subtler. And so, as you become more aware of like, well, when I have this thought, this is the sensation that I have. When I do this activity, this is the sensation I have. When I say, for instance, like spend a lot of time on the computer, all my energy moves up and out of my head. It's kind of like it comes through my eyes and it like actually squeezes my energy out of my body. And you start noticing these kinds of like energetic phenomenon that are associated with different activities or different thoughts or different perceptions. And so what the process for me has been so much is just paying attention to that. And this is why mindful meditation is so powerful, because it's like you're just being mindful. It's like you're aware of what your thoughts are. You're paying attention to that. You're paying attention to the subtle emotions that you're having or the intense emotions that you're having. You're paying attention to the subtle feelings in your body. I learned this, one of my first introductions to this in a really like deep way was Vipassana meditation. So when you're in Vipassana, it's like you're hyper focused on the body and then all of the sensations that come up in your body when you're having different thoughts or different things are going on. So you start making that link between, okay, when I'm thinking this way, like I'm tight in this area. And so this process of evolution becomes, how do you loosen all of those tight spots? How do you breathe life into the rocks that are like stuck in your energy body? And as you do that, and there's a lot of yoga practices, a lot of different kind of practices to do this, qigong. As you do that, then the energy flow starts flowing in that area. And then you start developing greater spiritual perception because you have energy flow to a particular part of your body, like your body technology, that is like a sense perception. So for instance, your chakras are like sense perceptions. When your heart is open, when your heart chakra is open, or when your root chakra is open, you are privy to a different current of energy that you wouldn't normally be privy to. So you actually are getting more information. And when you're conscious of that, you can be conscious of the messages that you're getting through these different energy centers. And there's a lot of different energy centers in the body. So, third eye being a great example, because this one's like the most obvious. This is where spiritual vision comes from. You get it from the third eye. So when you activate your third eye, you start seeing more visuals that are associated with the spiritual realm, or sometimes, you could say grid the spiritual realm. And then it's a way for you to see into the astral. Now, so this process of evolution, to me, in many ways, is very much deeply correlated with releasing the energy densifications that we have in our energy body, which opens up our consciousness, literally. So people think of consciousness being like inside the head or like being somewhere else even sometimes, but it's very much associated with all of our body and connected to our entire body. So we have consciousness everywhere, and our entire body is a vehicle of consciousness that is absorbing information, that is tuned in to all these different dimensions through the different sense perception organs that exist throughout our entire body, that are correlated to different aspects of our entire body. So what happens is, we're born into this world, and as a child, these senses are fresh, so there's a lot coming in, so we're not necessarily super aware of all the different things coming on, but or coming in, but we are open. So that's why as a child, so many of us probably have memories of being able to see all sorts of crazy things, or being tapped in. And I remember when I was a kid, my dad would read this book to me, the C.S. Lewis books, and I would stare at the ceiling, and there was this like asbestos popcorn on the ceiling. And it was the craziest thing, because I'd stare at the ceiling for a while, and out of those popcorn, the random popcorn pattern on the ceiling, the most intricate visualizations of the people in the story would emerge. And it would be like, I remember A Horse and His Boy was one of the stories that in the C.S. Lewis series. And I remember looking at the ceiling and it being the most intricate like portrait of this boy with the horse, and like the satchels on the horse and the reins, and like you could see the wrinkles in his clothes and his hair. It was like everything. It was insane that I could actually look at this random thing and get such a clear image. In my older age, the only time that kind of thing happens is when I'd taken psychedelics, and anyone that's taken psychedelics knows that happens. You see these prosaic patterns on the ground that, turn into these like meaningful, like hieroglyphs, or like, different sacred symbols. And, or it doesn't even need to be sacred. It turns into these intricate symbols that are oftentimes moving. But I was experiencing that as a kid before I kind of shut that off. But anyway, my point is that we're open as children, right? So, but there's so much phenomenon that we can't necessarily become aware of everything at once. Just like a child, in a room, will probably pay attention to whatever's the loudest thing in that room, and they might not learn about, what this lamp does, or what this, I don't know, whatever it is, pencil does, until later, because it's not the loudest thing. But, as we grow up, what happens is we become traumatized. And so even though all our senses are open when we're younger, when we become traumatized, that tightens us. And then when we tighten up, it's almost like our energy body gets put in like a pretzel hold or something. And that restricts the energy flow. And the energy flow restriction restricts the sense organ from being able to perceive. So, and like again, when I say sense organ, what I mean is that like, the third eye is like a spiritual sense organ. The heart is like a spiritual sense organ. We feel different essences from the heart, and there's different ways of, observing things, feeling things, hearing things, knowing things, and they come in through different areas, right? So you talk like when your gut awareness. So you get a good gut feeling, then that tells you something, right? So you're communicating with that. But anyway, when we get tightened up in our body, like it's put in a pretzel hold, our energetic body, it's very actually similar to like if your physical body was put in like a crazy full Nelson like pretzel scissor lock or something, and like your body's seized up and you can't quite use it functionally because you're tight. That's exactly what happens to our energy bodies, so our etheric bodies and our astral bodies, and we get caught in certain mental loops, and we lose the ability to perceive clearly, because our energy's all seized up. And so before we become old enough to learn how to and take note of and an inventory of all these different energy streams that are coming in through this wide open physiological technology that we have, our energies get blocked in all these different areas. And so then the process of, say, awakening after the trauma of being a human becomes, how do we find those blockage points, those points where we've been stuck, and breathe life back into them and soften them and open them back up? And when we're able to do that, then more sense perceptions come in. We start becoming, aware of these spiritual senses that, maybe we forgot we had, or we never were able to even fully become aware of, because due to the overwhelm of a child experiencing so many different things, we hadn't had time to really focus on that before it got shut down. So on top of that, I think that we can actually enhance and activate these senses beyond what we had as a child, right? So we can focus on them and consciously develop these things further and further and further. So what becomes interesting then is that, and this process of evolution for me has been so much like, when I think this way, I feel this tightness. So I, reframe it, perceive it a different way, breathe into that space, become aware of that tightness in my body and start running energy through it. Things like Qigong and Kung Fu have been super helpful for me for that process. But as I do that more and more senses come in and I become more aware. I have more perceptions. I have more consciousness about everything in my life. So as I continue to do that, what I find is that it then becomes this process of, on one side, loosening myself up, just really softening my energy field and opening up so the energy can flow. And then it becomes a process of then taking my intentions and expressing my intentions with higher intensity from that relaxed place. And the higher intensity that I can express my intentions from, it has to be a natural kind of intensity of like inspiration and motivation and love and the expression of that. But the more intensely I can express these things through a relaxed energy field, the more of an effect I create in my reality. So there's two sides. There's like the passive and the active. The passive side is really learning how to relax. It's like learning how to find those areas that are tight and relax those areas. And then also make the correlations between the thoughts and the emotions and all the different things that are the old locked pattern. And then relaxing that, repatterning that, and opening up my energy field, and then learning how to, in the same way that, a basketball player is like stiff when you're first learning how to shoot a basketball, you're kind of stiff because you don't know the movement yet, or, when you're practicing martial art, you're like stiff because you don't know the movement yet, but then once you get the movement down, then you can loosen into it, and then it becomes very fluid and easy. It's very much like that, like in life in general, right? So it's like, your intention might be to do this thing, but you haven't done before, so you're stiff as you're kind of learning how to do it. But then you can relax into it more and more and more, and then you can let the intensity of the energy flow into that activity, and you do it in a much more masterful way. But in order to gain access to all the different faculties, you have to be able to open up your energy body and relax into that so that the energy is flowing. And then you can start being like, okay, well, I have this intention to do this thing, and I'm going to then go through that learning curve period where it's tense, but I'm getting looser and looser with it. And then when you can match being loose while expressing yourself towards an intention, then you become very, very powerful in your expression. And then the more energetic pockets that you've opened up, be that blocked centers, or also be that maybe just centers that require deeper cultivation in order for you to fully create that deeper sense perception, or that deeper physiological technology or spiritual technology, then you can actually really start flowing an immense amount of energy towards your intention in the world. You become a much more powerful person. And to me, this is very much what spiritual development is, from one perspective. And there's a lot more elements to it, but it's a really fascinating way of looking at it. And I found it to be really powerful for me to look at it that way because it gives me permission to constantly be aware of my subtle energies in my body, and constantly kind of take inventory and take note of what's going on in these areas and see the direct benefit of doing that. Because as I become more conscious, all these different things going on, it's like it just keeps lighting me up with new powers, with new skills, and it's invigorating. It's awesome. So I wanted to share that with you and suggest that maybe you can give some Qigong or yoga a try, or just even mindful meditation, just like being aware of the subtle energies. When you start having thoughts, when you start having emotions, like tune in to where you feel that in your body and see if you can move energy through it to the point where it's feeling like the energy is flowing there. Anytime you have a negative emotion, that means energy is being blocked. You're seizing up. And letting that energy flow really starts opening you up to your greater, say, like superhuman powers. So thanks so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Go ahead and put any comments or questions in the comments below, and I will talk to you next time. One love.